Hello students, I wish you all the very best in your lives. Today I am here to present a short video over a very less understood concept in psychology as well as English literature, that is known as ego, right? So here is a concept known as ego. Generally, in normal usage of language, we say somebody that you have too much ego. You are an egotist person, without actually realizing the actual meaning of this term ego. Now, what psychology understands by ego is your self-concept. Ego happens to be our understanding about who we are with respect to others. So, my understanding of who am I with respect to others is my ego. So, my ego informs me who am I and how I am supposed to be in a given situation. What is expected out of me in a given situation? So, right now, my ego tells me that I am addressing students. I am supposed to deliver a lecture on the topic. I might be tempted to do something else. Maybe I am tempted to relax, but I can't because I am facing the camera and addressing you, precious people. Once I go back home, my ego will inform me that now you are in your private zone and you can relax. So, I would relax, right? So, our ego is our self-understanding that who we are with respect to others, right? So, our ego tells us about our limits. What is my limit? What is the line I should not cross? So, how am I supposed to be with the students? How am I supposed to be with my daughter? How am I supposed to be with my parents? What are my limits? Which all behaviors are approved and which all disapproved? What is desirable? What is undesirable? What is expected out of me and what is not expected out of me? This understanding which I have is because of my ego. And a real man with character, a person with healthy personality is one who has a strong ego. And a person who has a weak ego does not have a clear understanding about the social reality. That person doesn't understand what is desirable, what is undesirable. And therefore, they are the ones who end up being sociopath. They are the ones who develop maladaptive and undesirable personalities, right? So, how does our ego develops? Well, there is one single most promising theory given by none other than father of psychology, Sigmund Freud, who explains the process of development of ego at a very early age, between 2 to 5 years. So, between the age group of 2 to 5 years, we acquire our ego in our personality. So, when life begins, when we are born as an infant, we are born with a primitive mind. We are born with a primitive mind known as id. It is that mind which we have inherited from our ancestors who were non-humans, the pre-human ancestors who had a primitive mind. This primitive mind, has been passed on to us in inheritance. And with this primitive mind, that is id, every individual takes birth. So, at the time of birth, all our actions are driven by id. And id is raw, it is primitive, it is not accustomed to social reality, it is not cultured, it is like an undomesticated animal, it is like an untamed animal which has not learned the rules of how to live in a human society. So, we are born as animals, as biological organisms. We are born as biological organisms, just like any other animal. And how do animals behave? animals behave according to their bodily needs. They're driven by their bodily desires, their sensual pleasures. So animals do not have the capability of delaying their gratifications. They demand instant gratifications of whatever bodily needs which may arise time to time. So an animal starts salivating when it is hungry. Humans don't. Humans know how to control themselves. But at the time of birth, we were animals. So human infants, human babies, they cry when they're hungry. They would not allow the parents any time to arrange for food. They don't use toilets. They don't use toilets. Thankfully, we have diapers because they can't delay their bowel and bladder movements. They can't delay their instant gratifications. That means an animal supposedly does not have self-control. However, it's not true with humans. And journey of development of personality is nothing but transformation of this biological organism into a social being. The journey of transformation, the journey of personality development is nothing but transformation of this biological organism into a social being. So today we are a social being. And why are we a social being? It is because of our ego. And our ego develops between the age group of 2 to 5 years. Now, how does it develop? Theory given by Sigmund Freud. Let us have an understanding of it. So between the age group of 2 to 5, parents realize that this animal needs to be domesticated. He needs to learn the social etiquettes, the social mannerism, the social customs. He needs to learn how to behave in a social context. So he can't go continue with diapers anymore. This child cannot salivate when someone else is eating. This child can no longer live like an animal. So parents initiate with their children a process known as toilet training. Toilet training involves training for bowel and bladder control. This training for bowel and bladder control later on translates into self-control. So today you have a self-control. You might be tempted at a necklace in a jewelry shop and you can't afford to buy it. So what do? Do you steal it? You don't. Why? Because you have that self-control. You may be attracted towards a person. So what do? Do you lift him? No, because you know the consequences. You abstain from doing that. This self-control begins with toilet training between the age group of 2 to 5. And this toilet training is also known as parenting style. This toilet training is also known as parenting style. And Freud identified 3 types of parenting styles, depending upon the parents, whatever they adopt. And these parenting styles, determine what kind of ego will the child develop. It is the ego that is responsible for making us aware that how we are supposed to behave in a given situation. And if we do not behave the way we should, then what could be the following consequences of that action? This information comes from our ego. Now, how does ego develop? Due to parenting style, let us have a look. One of the styles of parenting is called authoritarian style of parenting. Authoritarian style is a very harsh and punitive style of parenting. It's a very harsh and punitive style. So children are definitely punished for their misconduct. However, the parents do not shower their love and affection for good conduct. So punishment guaranteed and no love also guaranteed is a kind of style called authoritarian style of parenting. Now children who have been punished, who have been harshly beaten, who have never been pardoned for their mistakes, they grow up with the belief that world never pardons any mistake. They grow up with the belief that world never pardons any mistake and therefore we cannot afford to commit any mistake. Now, this belief with which they grow up makes them anxious, anxiety-ridden people. They are always anxious that they should not commit any fault. They should not commit any mistakes, because in childhood, we were never pardoned. So in adulthood, we are not going to be pardoned. So they are always anxious about committing mistakes. And this leads to an undesirable personality, which is loaded with anxiety, right? So such kind of people are very, very rule bound. They are highly obsessed with rules. They are highly obsessed with conventions. The rules have to be followed. We cannot experiment with rules. Even if such experimentation is for good reasons, they would never experiment. Why? Because in childhood, मैंने एक बार रूल तोड़ा था, पापा ने पूरा का पूरा रूल मेरे पीठ पे तोड़ दिया था. So I can't break rules. I have to follow conventions. And this makes them a very rigid and conservative personality. As a civil servant, you will have a difficult time dealing with these people, because they will be the ones who will be no changers. If you come across with a progressive idea, they will resist it if it is against the convention. So it is these people who keep saying, pratishtha, parampara, anushashan, jo kabhi nahi jati, wahi hai jati. This kind of conversation comes from this kind of people, right? And it is because of the parenting style that they have received. Moreover, these people may also develop perfectionist tendencies. They always want perfection in everything what they do. Now, because they are always looking for perfection in all the endeavors of life, they often delay their assignments. So remember, students, a person who is perfectionist has difficulty in completing their task on the stipulated frame of time, because they are never satisfied with their performances. So they keep repeating the performances again and again unless and until they feel it is perfect, and that consumes their time, right? In civil service exam, my advice to all the students would be, you should try to be less imperfect, but never try to be perfect. Otherwise, you will have difficulty in completing your paper in the exam, right? And when they grow up and become parents themselves, they also follow the same practice with their children. So it's just like saying, a poorly treated daughter-in-law makes a bad mother-in-law later. I said, a poorly treated daughter-in-law makes a bad mother-in-law later. So, authoritarian style. In extreme cases, this authoritarian style can also lead to development of a group of mental disorder, generally known as neurosis. Okay. It may lead to development of a set of mental disorder which are known as neurosis. Now, neurotic people are those who always apprehend a danger in future which actually does not exist. They are always apprehensive of an unfound danger in future, waiting in future. So they are always, anxious. They are always anxious. So they keep making castles in air. The second type of parenting is known as permissive or liberal style of parenting. Permissive or liberal style of parenting. This style of parenting is very cold and negligent. So permissive parenting is a very cold and negligent style of parenting, in which parents seems to permit almost everything that the child does without correcting their mistakes. Probably the parents might be too busy in their work life, or probably the parents were yet not mentally prepared to accept the responsibilities of parenthood, and therefore they just ignore the child's conduct. Now this poor child fails to understand what is desirable and what is undesirable. He fails to understand what are my limits and what I am not supposed to cross. Where is the line that I am not supposed to cross? So they develop a very poor understanding of social reality, which leads to development of very weak ego. So ego, which is supposed to be the master to control the id, is very weak. It can't control the id. And therefore such children think that they are limitless. They can do whatever they like. They are generally social offenders, they are generally legal offenders. And children try to make some assumptions from their own end. They try to make assumptions in their mind about the social reality. And look at the child at the age of 2 to 5, what kind of understanding he might develop. His assumptions would be far away from the actual reality. So, they will make their own assumptions. Okay? And then they will deal with the social environment based upon those assumptions. Now, just to give some clarity, let me tell you, how did you develop understanding of your limit? So, you might have demanded your father that, Papa, I want a car. And your father got you a battery operated car. You were very happy. You thought that, okay, my father loves me so much that in the morning I make a demand and in evening I get it fulfilled. So let me try something big. So next time you demand a train and your father gets you a battery operated train. And you're not happy with that train, you throw away that train and you demand, I want the real Government of India train. And then you start crying, you start throwing temper tantrums, and this is the time when your father gives you a slap. That slap tells you that what is your limit. So you can demand a battery operated car, a battery operated train, you cannot expect a real train. So that slap is important for developing and shaping the ego. But here look at this child is permitted for everything that he does. So this child fails to realize that what I am supposed to expect from others. And therefore they become sociopaths. So they will take a flower, she loves me not, she loves me not, she loves me, and the hypothesis is confirmed. And poor she is not even aware that what has been hypothesized. Right? In extreme cases, they may develop a group of mental disorders which are characterized by psychotic symptoms, so we call it psychosis. Okay? Psychosis. So psychotic individual have started living in their own world of imagination, which is of course based upon their wishful thinking, which is completely different from the actual social reality, right? So they may develop psychosis. And psychotic patients at least show two symptoms. Delusion, their mind will be full of several delusions. Delusions are false beliefs which are taken as truth, false beliefs. And two most common form of delusions which they may have are delusions of grandeur and delusion of persecution. Delusion of grandeur involves having grandiose ideas about oneself, excessive sense of self-importance, right? Thinking that I am the most important person on earth. Delusion of grandeur. And delusion of persecution is that the whole world is out to get me. Everybody is plotting against me, everyone is conspiring against me, and especially my near and dear ones are conspiring against me. So should the husband have this kind of delusion, he would start being suspicious about his wife, that my wife is being disloyal with me, she's planning to kill me. So let the wife come with a cup of tea, first you try, this kind of responses, right? And another symptom is hallucination. Hallucinations are sensory experiences in absence of any kind of stimulation, in absence of any kind of stimulus. And there can be several types of hallucination. For instance, there can be tactile hallucination. Somebody just now touched me. There can be auditory hallucination. I can hear the footsteps. Somebody just whispered my name, although none did so. Or they can have visual hallucination. They can see people who do not exist, especially dead people. And the family members will think that the person is possessed by spirits. But actually the person is hallucinating. Why? Because the history comes from 2 to 5 years of age group. Right? Now just imagine the dangerous situation, how the gravity of the situation. If a husband has these kind of symptoms, hallucination, delusion, one day he plans to come back home early to catch his spouse red-handed. Now he's expecting a male voice inside the room. So because he's expecting a male voice, imagining a male voice, he will actually hear it out. So doubt confirmed. Now they will break into the room and they will imagine a stranger, a male stranger, and they will actually see a male stranger. They will pull out their gun, so one shot to the wife, another shot to the male stranger, and then call the police without any guilt. I have committed 2 murders. The police officers will be confused. Where is the second body? Because the second body was just imagination, a mental image, right? Now, I don't say that permissive parenting will always lead to development of psychosis. Psychosis may develop due to genetic disorders also, due to biological reasons also. There are several other reasons. But yes, this is an enabling factor. And third is democratic style. In the third phase, we have the democratic style of parenting. This is a blend of love and punishment for good and bad behaviors, respectively. So, love is showered on the child for good conduct and punishment is given for bad conduct. When this is done, the child develops a very clear-cut understanding about the social reality. What is desirable and what is undesirable, he makes a difference between them. He begins to see things in the right perspective, in black and white. So such children develop a strong ego, and a strong ego is like a strong master who never allows the animal do its own way. So democratic parenting is the most preferable, most desirable style of parenting for development of a strong ego as well as a healthy personality. This was just a part of Sigmund Freud's theory, which I'd like to share with the students so that you have a feel of the subject psychology. Thank you so much for being patient enough to listen to me. Thank you.